You're listening to the Living Mandala podcast. My name is Ara. The Color and the Living Mandala series continues with Nicole Cullum here. She is with Color Caravan. ColorCaravan.com is the website. And this episode is going to be all about the color white. All right. So we've done Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, indigo, blue, indigo, violet. And then we did black. So now we're going to do white. So let's talk about white.
Well, so white. Is white a color? Or is white
all the colors, right?
Right. If black is the absence of light, is black even a color? Same with white. So white is one of the first colors that our Paleolithic ancestors used. They used calcite or chalk, and they would dig that up and use that to draw in cave art, along with red and yellow ochre and black as charcoal. So those were the first colors that we used in our cave paintings.
Right. And of course, white shows up in nature, we've got clouds, we've got birds, we've got flowers, we've got, there are some white foods. I'm thinking of mushrooms and I'm, thinking of,
birds especially,
lots of white in nature. But then, in order to harness that white and actually do something with it, it's mineral-based. So all of these are like plant, animal, or mineral.
Titanium.
Titanium white, right? Crystals, cotton,
linen. A lot of our fabrics start as a white because of that organic fiber.
Wool, that's a great one, right? And of course, fluffy white kitties. Of course. So in terms of white, the spiritual dimensions of white are interesting. Again, white, it doesn't line up neat and tidy with simply one of the chakras. As we've, there's not like one episode that I could point to back in the Chakras of the House series. But white is often associated with either the sixth or the seventh chakra, enlightenment. That sometimes white will show up in imagery around the third eye or around the crown chakra as well. So the spiritual dimensions of white, of course, indicate purity. You'll see monks in training who haven't quite earned their orange robes yet will wear white robes. That's very common. So I'm thinking of acolytes at church, like the guys that go light the candles, before the service starts. Often they're wearing white robes. So white it's got those qualities or those associations, at least, with purity.
Wedding
dresses are white. Another great example. Right. So, spiritual dimensions of white sort of point to purity. Religious dimensions of white also sort of point to purity. What else do you have for, religious dimensions?
So, in religious aspects, white is the Lamb of God, right? When Christ emerges from the tomb, his robes are described as shining, exceeding white as snow. So that kind of purity aspect is very much associated with Christ reborn. White became a political color in religion. So, Benedictine monks wore black or shades of brown as a sign of humility, whereas the Calvinists, I think, wore white. And the Benedictine monks were like, that is hubris, that is prideful. And they said, no, it's a symbolism of purity, and black is the symbol of the devil, right? So it became this like political clash between different sects of Christianity. So it's either purity or it's mimicking Jesus, right? Or honoring him in some aspects. So white can be a really political color. In Judaism, on Yom Kippur, rabbis dress in white, as do the members of the congregation, and that is meant to restore the bonds between God and the followers.
Wow. And also, like, white just that back end that push pull between black and white. Black is a color of mourning for a large part of the world, but white is also a color for mourning. I believe specifically in China, but other places as well. So it's like kind of weird how the same color can have such a push pull.
China and Korea, actually, they consider white. Like undyed linen, that is the color of mourning in their funerals. And it's associated as the masculine color, the yang color.
Yeah, it's very yang. We'll get to feng shui here in a minute. But, in terms of some of the more emotional dimensions and auric field dimensions, of course, it's considered an illumination color. It's associated with revelation. For those who can see auras, crystal white in an aura indicates complete mastery of something. So it's a color of mastery. Pearl white in an auric field is associated with kindness. It can be very uplifting to wear white, to the wearer. Again, it's associated with purity. And I've also got this down that if you're having trouble sleeping in all white can be helpful.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, so if you've got some sleep issues, try wearing all white.
That's interesting because in our discussion on black, I forgot to mention that like in Japan, black is associated with mastery, a black belt.
Of course. My son is a black belt.
Exactly. Yes. But I was like, your son, oh my God, I can't believe I forgot that. But now you're saying that white is associated.
Well, and in martial arts, white is
enlightenment. The beginner.
White is the beginner.
Beginner.
And at least my martial arts instructor, I don't know if he was joking or not, but I'll share it. You start with a white one and you demonstrate mastery because you've worn your white belt for so long that it turns black.
Oh,
zing, right?
That's good.
Right?
Yeah.
Of course, you really go through a bunch of different colors.
10,000 hours
between the two. But I am not a black belt. My son is. But anyway, so white, it's got a lot of that push-pull. So how do we use white in design? I feel like it's a go-to for everybody.
Well, it is a go-to. And that's because, it gives that purity. It gives that sense of blankness, cleanliness, emptiness. It's used in minimalism. You can have white everything and never go wrong, but that you can also create a sense of just unfriendliness, right? Where it's blindingly white. Humans have sterile, right? It's gives kind of a very clinical aspect of white, and of course, there's 100 whites in the world that we can choose from, and each one has a different undertone to it. So, humans can have a hard time with white. They can perceive it as too bright or too brilliant, and it can stress the eye. So, you want to be careful when using white because everyone wants that, super clean, crisp white, but too much of a good thing can actually be stressful on the eye. So be sure to pair it with a secondary color, even if it's a more tonal white. But having a bright, brilliant white everywhere can actually be too stark and too hard on the eye, especially if you have a lot of natural light in your room.
Right. Well, and it's like the perfect segue into the feng shui applications and usages of white. White is very young. It's very bright. Too much of it is too stimulating. Just quite frankly, it's way too stimulating. White is a stand-in for metal as well. So if you need to infuse a certain sector of the home, specifically the helpful people and travel or the creativity and children areas of the home, which are kind of towards the front right side of the house or the room, according to the feng shui school that I follow, which is a BTB. If you're into these things, you would know what that meant. White is a stand-in for metal. And so if you need to boost the metal element in any way, you can simply use the color white if you don't want to actually use metal itself. It promotes clarity and precision. So, it sounds like metal already. Yep. It's great for, home offices and study areas and workspaces like that. It's associated with enhanced communication. I think for its yang qualities, Of course, it's a clean and pure color. In terms of feng shui cures, I sort of associate white certainly with of a metal as a stand-in for metal, but I also think about crystals. Crystals are in theory, I guess, more see-through. They fragment the light, but they speak to the quality of white where light hits a crystal and you get that colorful prism all in your room. So if there's an area of the home that feels very stagnant, often placing a crystal or a plant, back when we were on the green train, a plant will do the same thing, but a crystal will provide stimulation in stagnant areas, and zhuzh up the energetics of the space just for that quality that it has, where light hits it and you get that prism effect.
White is actually considered achromatic.
Oh, achromatic.
Achromatic, monochromatic, one color, achromatic, absence of color, because it has no hue.
Right.
So, technically white is considered a combination of red, green, and blue light.
Far out.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Yeah. And here we're just throwing around white.
But it has all the color.
But it has all the colors.
And yet itself is achromatic. How about that?
Right. In terms of planetary astrology and white, white is associated with the moon and Monday. So we're doing this recording on a Monday. And, oh, look, I'm wearing all white. And so are you. It's the weirdest thing. Monday is the color of white. And the yantra associated with Monday has a lot of white in it. It also has a lot of pale blue in it because Monday is also the day of Lord Shiva. And so Shiva also is sort of associated with that light blue. But specifically white is moon. It's the moon color, which makes perfect sense. Why Moon Day was named as such. And
I'm going to start saying Moon Day instead of Monday.
Moon Day, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so that's the planetary. Now, white as the embodied goddess. Okay, I have 4 that I have identified.
I have more than 4.
Okay, why don't you start then?
Okay. Well, speaking of Moon Day, Artemis, goddess of the moon, protector of the vulnerable, especially women and children. She is a virgin goddess, so she embodies not only the moon, but purity, virginity.
Cool. All right. I have White Tara.
Of course.
Shocking. Tibetan goddess of mercy and the wonders of the afterlife.
Ooh.
Yeah. So here we had another Tara, White Tara.
Kuan Yin. My dear Kuan Yin, goddess of compassion.
We have a match.
Oh, we have a match.
I also have Kuan Yin. I think I chose her specifically because you and I, we know this about each other. We each have several, for some reason, Kuan Yin statues, and they're that
from our grandmother,
from our grandmothers of all.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and they're solid white porcelain, I guess. I'm not sure what that material is. And they're very old school. They're like from the teens or 20s or something. Yep. And she's often depicted with a lotus or a jug of water.
Standing on a lotus.
Yeah, or standing on a lotus.
She stands on a lotus and she can hold a lotus, or she can be pouring out a vessel
out of the jug.
Right.
Yeah, healing waters. Okay. So who else do you have?
I have Psyche, the goddess of the soul and self-discovery and personal growth, and she embodies white for purity of thought.
Okay. I have White Buffalo Calf Woman.
Oh, we have another match.
Because white buffalo, part of it, Native American mother goddess. Of course, white buffaloes are, just one in a gazillion. They're very rare anomaly.
But it's also because she embodies the 4 directions, which are white, black, red, and yellow, and white in Native American direction is south.
Cool.
Right. Okay. I also have Hera, goddess of love, marriage, and destiny, and I would assume that Hera is associated with white because of her loyalty to her husband.
Okay. My final one is probably it's the first one I wrote down. I didn't lead with her, but Saraswati, Hindu goddess of words, the arts, of music. She, in her statues, is often depicted in solid white. Hair, skin, clothing, everything is in white. She's often depicted with a musical instrument, a string of pearls, a rosary. Very often a peacock will be in the situation, but she is overtly associated with the color white.
My last one is Frigga, the Norse goddess of love, marriage, and destiny.
Cool.
So I would ask where white shows up with you, and a note on white. So white can be a wonderful tool in interior design. If you have a small room and want to make it look bigger, paint the whole thing white, including the trim and the ceilings. It will make it look brighter and bigger. If you have rooms with very few windows, white is a wonderful tool to kind of fake light. So if you have a dark space, go with that whiter aspect. Places to maybe avoid white. So media rooms, if you want it to be nice and dark so you can see your movie, I would encourage maybe to not use white because the reflection off of the TV will bounce off of the white in the rooms. And if you have north-facing rooms, be careful with your whites. Make sure your white has a warmer undertone instead of a blue undertone, because north-facing light has a blue cast to it, so your whites will look bluer. Now, the opposite goes for south and west-facing rooms. Southern light and western afternoon light have a yellower tint to it. So make sure your whites have a cool undertone, or else you will end up with a better yellow white room instead of a nice, even, calm room if you choose white that has a yellow undertone in southern or western facing rooms.
It's good to share all of that because I think white is such an easy go-to for people that people are very scared of color. I am not. I'm not one of them, but I understand and see why it's so appealing to just have all white walls and then use color on top of that white as an accent to that white.
But people also, because white is such a go-to, there's a cajillion whites, and people get stuck in overwhelm with white the most often.
Oh God, have you been lately to just there's a nice swatches?
That's right. Like a whole section. So how do you avoid that? Look at your color strip and compare and contrast. If you see pink in your white, if you see yellow or blue in your white, just know you can use that, but it depends on the direction of light in your room. You can use those colors to correct blue, north or east facing light, and vice versa. If your white has a blue undertone to it, it's going to color correct the yellow light in south or western facing rooms.
Makes perfect sense. All right. You're listening to the Living Mandala podcast.